Well, welcome everybody. It's a big day. Welcome to the ON1 Photo RAW 2026 webcast. We've got new, cool, amazing stuff, and I want to welcome everybody who normally watches my ON1 one-on-one. It's called ON1 podcast. I want to welcome all of you and everybody else that's watching from all over. Thank you guys for joining us. We've got an amazing show for you. You're going to see all kinds of crazy new stuff. Man, things are happening so fast, right? There's so many new things happening. What an incredibly exciting time to be a photographer, right? I don't think there's ever been a better time than right now to be a photographer, because there's just the technology and the access to things that we have today are just mind-blowing. And you're going to get to see some of that very same stuff today. We've got a couple of gentlemen joining us that who you, if you watch the one-on-one podcast, you're already quite familiar with them. But we're going to be talking to Dylan Kotecki and Dan Harlacher. There they are, right there. There's the guys.
Hey guys, how's it going?
All right. Hey, this is the first time we've all been three up, so I'm kind of excited. You know, but you notice they made mine like a third as wide. So I told them, I said, hey, don't give me one of those tiny little ones. I got to go wide. Anyway, thank you guys. Thank you guys for joining us. Look, you've got so much to show. I don't want to take up a whole bunch of time other than thanking you guys for joining us. And thanks to everyone watching. And I'm going to turn it up. I think Dylan's going to go, got some stuff. So Dylan's going to kick it off. I'm going to pass the mic over to Dylan. Here we go. There we go. Dylan, take it away.
Grabbed it. Thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
You bet.
I'm really excited to be here today. Photo RAW 2026 just dropped. It's got a lot of cool new features, cool stuff. So Dan and I are going to show you guys some of these cool things you can do and accomplish with Photo RAW 2026. The first thing I wanted to show is the integration of our, I guess you would call it, flagship program, Dano, right? With Resize. The all-new Resize AI 2026 is now integrated into Photo RAW 2026. So you can essentially upscale and resize any image to any dimension while maintaining that same quality and detail that you're looking for. So I'm in Photo RAW 2026. I'm just going to grab this photograph. I typically like using Resize AI with wildlife captures, especially if you can't afford a big, huge zoom lens or something like that, and you're just out capturing photos of birds or sort of any animal, squirrels, what have you. You can use Resize AI to create really awesome upscaled images so that you can simply just crop in on the areas that you want to crop in on. You could also use Resize AI to blow up an image to print it at a larger size. So let's just go in here. I'm going to take this photo into Resize by just clicking on the Resize button. And in Resize AI, we have two different settings now. We have standard, which is a little bit quicker, and it gives you amazing results. But we also have this option for highest quality. Now I'm going to choose highest quality simply because it gives really amazing results. And I personally think it's worth the wait. It's a little bit longer as far as getting those results to you, but I'm going to click on that and I'm just going to go to my percent section here and I'm just going to resize it 4 times. So I'll just click on 4x and I'm going to zoom in. Scott was saying something about the stick right here, but we're not worried about the stick today.
No, we're all about the stick.
We're just going to worry about the detail of the bird, so don't worry about the stick sitting right there. But it does just take just a little bit longer than the standard results, but you'll see in a second that it's way worth it when it comes to actually upscaling and resizing those images. Like I was saying earlier, when it comes to resizing, you can do this in a variety of different ways. You could use it for, oh, there we go. And so let's check out our original. So we have the original on the left. You can see how, I guess it's probably a little bit tough to zoom, but as I move this over.
Wow.
It's looking so much better than that blurry sort of zoomed in look. It's maintained all of those details within the feathers. The beak is incredibly sharp. The eye, just a really an amazing tool for upscaling and resizing those photos.
What's so incredible about this is that normally, historically, without using AI, resizing up meant your image was guaranteed to be softer.
Exactly.
And here now we're experiencing it's sharper than the original. That's just nuts.
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, just the feathers you can see in there, it looks just great. That might be a little bit. I'll zoom in a little bit more.
Oh, that's good right there.
So that's the
Wow.
original, and then after, and then we get that stick out of the way there. That's how we do it, Scott. We just crop it really far.
All right. Hey, if I can point out something, Dylan, it's a minor thing, but it meant a lot. It meant a lot when I saw it there. So previously in Resize, if I wanted to go to 200% or 400%, I would have to click in the type box and erase it and type in the new number. And
Exactly.
I complained about that bitterly to a man named Dan.
And what did Dan do?
Dan put some
the 2x, 4x, and 8x
yes,
right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved it. I love it. I love it. I love Dan for it. I think, I know it's a little thing, but I swear I couldn't tell you how happy I was when I saw that.
I noticed that too when it came out. I
cried.
I love that.
I cried.
love that because I use the percentage one. I never use. I mean,
That's
I
what I
hardly
use.
use these other ones. I use percentage every time. Every time.
Exactly. That's exactly where I live. When I saw those, I burst into tears. I was on the floor in the fetal position. I just couldn't have been happier. And you know what's funny? When I told Dan about it, I was bitterly complaining, and he's like, "Well, I don't see why we can't do that." I'm like, "Really?" And next thing I knew, it was there. But usually when you're talking to people that have product managers and stuff, they push back on everything you ask for. Can I get a button there? They're like, no, no, no. Dan was like, I don't see why we couldn't do that. I was like,
Yeah. Here, Scott, just to prove it. See, look, I have this notebook that I have at my desk. It says Scott on it, and it's just pages and pages of feedback from Scott. Every time you tell me something, I write it down, and I make sure it gets in there.
Oh, I thought you wrote it down, and then everybody got around like one of those barrels outside and burned it, and they're like warming their hands on my feedback. I didn't. That's great. That's cool.
Yeah. No. We do our best to listen and make sure we get people's feedback in there. So.
No, and it's obvious, by the way, and I'm not saying you listen to just my feedback, but it's obvious the way you guys listen to your users, because your stuff is evolving at such a fast pace, and it's not just the technological side of it, but it's also the usability, the UI changes you guys have made. It keeps getting easier and easier and more powerful at the same time, which is quite a balancing act, by the way.
It is. It is a big balancing act. And that's actually kind of the perfect segue. I think Dylan, you've covered everything on Resize?
No, I'm done, Dan. It's all you, man.
Okay, good. Because I'm just going to take the rest of the time for myself. So, the segue about trying to balance the power and the usability is a big challenge, certainly for us and for anybody in the space. And I think this new masking stuff that I'm going to show you guys really is a good example of that, because we have always had a wide range of masking tools in Photo RAW, and masking is just a core technology to getting your work done, both in creating composites and putting filters and adjustments where you want them. And we've always let you use multiple tools on a mask. It wasn't, this is a gradient mask and that's all you could use. You could use any combination of tools on a mask. It kind of had this hidden mask stack under it. Well, the big change is we've actually exposed that as a full masking stack. And I'm going to show you that here in a minute. But the interesting part in doing this was making sure it still worked the same way for existing users. We didn't want to completely change the paradigm of masking. So I think we've done a pretty good job of expanding your flexibility and still keeping it friendly and accessible to everybody. And I think the thing that really makes it really fun and accessible is this first thing I'm going to show you, and that's the new subject and background masking capabilities. So we've built this subject and background masking. You'll see it in a couple of places. I'm going to use it here inside of a local adjustment. You notice that now when I add a local adjustment, I can pick exactly where I want to apply that adjustment before I make the adjustment. Typically you would add an adjustment and then you'd use a mask to subtract what you're doing. It's kind of backwards from the way we think. We kind of rethought about that when we invented Super Select. Same idea. Let's just pick the area and tell us what you want. So I want to adjust the subject. So I'm just going to click on subject. And there we go. Look, it's already made a mask. And if I turn the mask preview on, we can see what that mask looks like. And there it is. It's a really great mask. Picks up all those little hairs around the edge. And I didn't have to do anything but click a button to do that. And now to make an adjustment, I can just come over here to my local adjustment and, have it like I normally would. Maybe I want to bring the midtones up and those highlights down a little bit to kind of balance that puppy dog out. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's a nice
Very
dog.
simple.
That's a nice
It's a
dog.
good looking dog.
That's a good
Yeah.
dog.
And that was just super, super simple to do something like that. I'll show you another example. Here's another one. I think anybody who shoots in a studio is going to love this one. So I'm shooting on this white background. Not very white, is it? I really don't want to brighten it up. Well, gosh, it's pretty easy to do the same thing. If you can pick the subject, you can pick the background too, right? So I'm just going to click background, bang, grab the exposure slider. Well, look at there. A
Oh,
much cleaner, whiter background in literally, a click and a move of a slider. It's all very simple having that subject and background selections. The other thing that's really cool about it is just the quality of these masks are so much better. In the past, you'd have to use the refine brush to clean up edges. I pretty much never use the refine brush anymore. These mask quality is so much better than it was before. Let's say I'm going to add a background mask here. I'm just going to lighten or darken that background up a little bit. Let's take a look at the mask. Let me zoom in up here. Hey, come here, you little turkey. And look, all those tiny little itty bitty hairs all masked out perfectly. No need to use a refine brush.
yeah, Dan, I can tell you, I'll vouch for what he's saying. The sheer quality of the masks has gone up exponentially in this release. They really, you guys did a phenomenal job on just the sheer quality of the masks.
Yeah. No, we appreciate that. And, we put quite a bit of work into that. The whole idea is, you want to make masking easy, but still be powerful at the same time. So we also added some additional new features that I'm going to show you here in a second. But I want to show you one more because trees are tough and everybody always complains about trees. So let's go find a tree. There we go. Here's a tree. And I'm just going to do a subject mask on this. So it's applying to just the tree. I'll turn my exposure up so you can kind of see there's the mask. And if we zoom in on this guy, we look at the mask. See, it's getting in all the little nooks and crannies inside of the tree. Where in the past, you'd have to do a whole bunch of refine brushing to try to get this deep stuff on the inside. And this works with other things like smoke and fog and wedding veils and semi-transparent stuff like glass. It just works right through all that stuff too. So it's pretty cool. All right, but
I'm in the same
so far I've
boat
only
that you
showed you
are.
With a single. Say that again?
I'm in the same boat that you are. I don't use the refine brush anymore at all.
Yeah. No, I try not to. So the next thing I want to show you, and I kind of alluded to it, is that you can actually have multiple masks on the same thing you're working on. So on a layer, you can have multiple masks, or on a filter or an adjustment, you can have multiple mask layers to let you kind of combine those together. So I'll give you an example. This is a fairly simple one. Let's take this photo here. You go back to fit. And it's kind of a cool photo, but I really wish these pink flowers in the foreground were actually yellow instead of pink. So let's make them yellow instead. Well, how would we go about doing that? Well, I could add a color fill layer and I could try to paint it in, but it's going to be really painstaking around her body and along the edge where it meets the sky. Let me show you a much easier way to do it. So let's start off by adjusting the background. So we kind of have a subject, her, and we have a background, everything is not her, right? So I'm just going to add a background adjustment. And I could come down here and I could try to, mess with the temperature to try to get it, but I don't think I'm going to get the yellow that I want. So I'll use the paint with color option. And let's go pick something yellowish. It's a little yellow green, but that's a good starting point for us. But there's a problem. What happened? It applied that also to the sky. I don't want the sky to be yellow. So how do I get the sky added to that mask now? Well, again, I could try to brush or I could try to use a gradient or something like that, but I can now add multiple mask layers. So over here, my masking palette, I see where it says mask layers, and I can see the first one that I added, that background mask. If I turn it on and off, you can see that mask. If I want to add another mask to it, I can just click right here on the plus button or use the buttons at the top, and I can add another mask layer. So in this case, I want to add, and look, I've got a ton of different kinds of masks that I can add or subtract or intersect with that previous mask. So in this case, I want to remove the sky. So I'm going to say, hey, sky, add, or actually subtract. I want to subtract the sky. And bang, look at that. So now I took a sky mask and my background mask, it combined them together so that it's only affecting the background part that isn't sky. So now I got just the part that I'm interested in, which is pretty cool. Now let's take a quick look at the mask here, and I'll show you something else that's handy. Oh, look, it's got this little bit of a halo because the two selections aren't exactly perfect with each other because they're different masking technologies. Well, watch, I can now also access the new refine mask dialog on any one of those mask layers where I can feather it or apply levels or window adjustments, or the new shift edge one is one that I like. Look, I can shift the edge of the mask around. So now I can get rid of that bit of a halo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, pretty tricky, huh?
Ah, very nice.
Yeah. So you can add as many of these mask layers as you want. You can add them or subtract them so that you're either combining or limiting the mask down, or you can also use an intersect mode as well, which is another way. So basically only where the two masks actually overlap, it will create one. So it is just a crazy amount of power and flexibility in terms of what you can do. And you can do this with depth and with luminosity and with any of the other masking tools. Even Mask AI, where it actually just picks based on named regions like the sky or dirt or cars or things like that. It's crazy powerful new masking tools here inside of 2026.
Wow. Hey, Dan, before we roll on to the next one, we've got some folks tuning in from all over. I just want to give a couple of quick shout outs, if that's all right. We've got Jay from the Twin Cities. He says, hi, Scott. Doug's here from Council Bluffs, Iowa. Barbara's here from SoCal. Elizabeth is here from Waukesha, Wisconsin. Almost said Washington. And looks like, I can't see who that is, from Calgary in Alberta, Canada. Let's see. Christine is here from Port Charlotte. Scotty Burger, Scotty D Balls is here from Boca. He says he loves these events. He's saying hi to everybody. Let's see. Tina says, good morning, everybody. Yep, still morning in Arizona, everybody. Guy says hi from Belgium this evening. And John says hi from Guernsey in the Channel Islands. Tom's here from Miami. Dennis is here from Northfield, Minnesota, I think that is. S. Brown's here from Ontario. And Orvoki is here, hey, from Sweden. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Dan, we've already got a couple of questions, if you can just real quick.
Sure. Yeah, you bet.
First off was, someone's asking the question, Bruce actually is asking the question, why is the Resize app grayed out inside of his version of Photo RAW 2026?
It's probably grayed out because you don't have a photo selected. So you need to make sure you have a photo selected, then it'll enable. If anything is disabled, it's probably because you don't have a photo selected.
All righty. And this is a great one. This one's for Dylan. He says, this is Pecan asks, why don't you remove that stick? No, I'm kidding. That's not what he asked. He wants to know what camera that bird shot was taken with.
It's trying to save time, I guess. Didn't want to take up too much time with eliminating a stick.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just playing. But he wants to know what camera and I guess lens you used for that shot. Do you remember?
I think it was an 85 millimeter.
Oh, 85?
Yeah.
I think it was.
That's.
Did you have it set up like a remote trigger?
No.
No. Okay.
I was going to say that's not a hot choice with wildlife and birders.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying when it comes to resize. You can have a shorter lens and then crop in with resize.
Oh, clever.
There you go.
All right, but what about that stick? Hold on. So Fastidious is asking. I know. Scott. I got to let it go. Fastidious is asking, is it any better to resize 2 times twice than to just go straight for the 4X? Nope. Just go for 4X. It does not gain you anything. All right.
So it's actually worse.
All right. So Ann's asking a question, but this is a very, very tough one to answer. How does this compare with ON1's Mosaic software? I know that's what I did.
Not familiar with the Mosaic software. I mean, many years ago, we had a thing called Mosaic, but that was an iPhone app for sharing. So,
Yeah, so Ann, maybe if
Yeah.
you could, in the chat, just drop us a line or about maybe expand on that a little bit. All right, but I'm going to turn things back over to you. I just wanted to, before we went too much further, I wanted to give a couple of shout outs and ask a couple of questions. If you have questions for the guys, just drop them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them for you. And any questions regarding the stick will be read immediately at any time.
I'm gonna go and delete those.
It's too late. It's too late. It's already out there. It's on the internet. You can't take it back. All right, Dan, passing you the mic. Whew.
All right. Well, I'm actually done. I'm going to pass the mic over to Dylan instead. So there's the mic for you again.
I love this.
So,
I love doing
yeah.
this. This is fun.
There you go.
I got it. There we go.
Ooh, nice
It's like
mic.
doing
Is
the
that a
wave.
Shure?
Like the wave.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Okay, so Dan's going to talk more about this later on in the presentation, but there's a lot of cool UI updates and revamping within the app to make things a bit easier and just to make things feel a bit more fresh. One of my favorite things that we've updated is how you select filters and how you can favorite filters using effects. So in effects now, if we choose add filter, we have this completely revamped filter dialog, and we've broken these filters up into categories now. So we have essentials, which is essentially going to be the filters that you're going to be using the majority of the time. You know, it's black and white, you have curves, vignette, things like that. The things that are most commonly used in your editing and styling. And then we have creative. These are going to be more on the stylistic side. So we have LUTs, you know, motion, split field, things like that. And then we have landscape, which are the filters, and you can use these on portraiture, you can use these on anything, but most of the time you're going to be wanting to use these filters within landscape edits. And then we have legacy, and these are, I'm assuming, Dano, are oldest filters.
They might be old. It's more likely that
may
they're
not be used as much as the other filters. I use bleach bypass and actually antique quite a bit, but anyway, so these are broken up into categories now, which makes it a little bit easier to find those filters that you are looking for. One thing we've also done is we've grabbed this little hamburger menu. And so you'll notice we have show legacy filters. So if you don't want to see those, you can actually eliminate that, and then it just takes that column away. And then if you don't want to see this little before and after option to the right-hand side where it gives you a description, you can also eliminate that as well. Not eliminate's a bad word. I should say hide. You can hide that from this filters dialog. And so there's those two options now, just to make it easier on your workflow. You know, some folks don't really like seeing that. They want to just see the actual filters that they're choosing. And so you can hide or view those at your leisure. Another thing that's really, really helpful and I really enjoy is creating your favorites. So, for example, my favorite filter, one of my favorite filters is glow. I use glow constantly.
Let's go. Love glow.
Probably to the annoyance of some people when they're watching my tutorials, but I love glow. And so I would probably go in here, I'd hover over glow. You can see it has a little heart there. So I can just click it. And now, well, let's click a couple more. So I love glow. I love black and white. So we'll favorite that. I also love dynamic contrast. And I love some of these legacy filters also. I'm going to give them love. So let's say you found all of these filters that you are using constantly within your image. You can go down to the search bar now, and you can click on this little heart, and then it's only going to show you those favorites that you have, so that you don't have to, you know, look through all those different filters. You can just find these ones that you really enjoy using, that you use constantly within your editing, which is incredibly helpful, especially, you know, if you're not really using many of these filters and you have, you know, those ones that you show up or that you add onto your image every single time. You can just quickly heart those, and then there you go. You can immediately add those into your favorites, which is really easy and fun to do, especially if you're a filter guy like me and you're constantly adding filters into your image. Did you want to talk about, Dana, did you want to talk about the templates?
The starting points?
Or do you want me to dive into that?
Oh, jump into it. You're right there.
Okay, yeah. So another cool thing that we've updated inside of effects, and this is especially great for folks that are maybe coming from Lightroom or Photoshop or a different program, is that we actually have these templates that you can use for your effects tab. So for example, if you're coming from Lightroom, you can click on the Lightroom option, and it's going to stack these filters just as it would inside of Lightroom. So you have curves at the top, and then goes into color mixer. And so if you're familiar with using that application, this is how it's laid out in there. And so all you would have to do to enable one of these filters is just simply turn it on and then modify the style. Which is really helpful, especially if you're not really sure where you want to go with an edit or you're not sure which filters you want to add. You can go in here and use these, and it's really, really helpful. Another option, too, is you can go in and actually find the presets that are actually built into Photo RAW, and some are actually the ones that you've added as well. And so if you're looking for, let's go in here to just maybe vivid landscape, we can click on one of these, and it's going to just add in those filters right there. So you don't actually have to bog through these presets over here. You can just use this area to show up or to add that specific stack of filters into your effects, which is really, really helpful, especially again if you're not really sure where you want to go with an edit or you want maybe an idea. You can add these little templates, which is really, really helpful. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it back to Dano, who's going to actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm moving on to another thing in effects where we're going to talk about 4 brand new filters inside of Photo RAW 2026. I'm going to start with the first one, which is depth lighting. And I'm going to grab a more appropriate photo for that. We're going to grab this portrait here. So there's 4 brand new filters. They do a whole lot of really cool things. I'm always stoked when we add new filters into a new version of Photo RAW. But I'm going to show depth lighting today. And so depth lighting is an incredibly helpful tool, especially if you're a portrait photographer or you're photographing specific subjects. This could be cars, products, you name it. Essentially what it does is it targets the area that's closest to the camera so that you can modify that specific area by adding in light. So with portraiture, more often than not, when we're shooting outside, especially against a sunlit backdrop, we're going to get a lot of backlight, and we're not going to have a whole lot of light coming into our subject. So what we can do is we can head into our depth lighting. We can use this foreground slider. We can pull up on the foreground option there. And now we're just adding light into the areas that are closest to that lens. We're essentially just relighting the scene here so that we have more light on our subject. And then what we can do is we can actually use this background slider and we can remove light from the background to really focus the attention into the actual subject itself. Cool thing about this is you can actually modify where that depth is at. And so this is helpful, especially if you have a longer foreground or the subject is deeper into the scene. You can actually modify where that depth is, where that depth actually starts and ends within the scene. And then let's say, for example, your mask is a little bit too specific there. You can also modify the transition to bleed that transition of depth, or at least the lighting, into the background and foreground with that transition slider. And then another cool thing with depth lighting is you can actually modify the temperature of your foreground and background independently of one another. And this is really great for portraiture, especially because sometimes when we have that shadowy look on our subject, it can make them a little bit too cool. And so you can modify the temperature of your foreground. You can warm that section up, and then you can cool the background down a little bit to, again, just swap that light and then create a little bit of a different look within the scene to match what you were going for when you captured that image.
Nice.
Yeah. Really helpful way to just relight portraiture. There's also these great styles in here, especially if you're looking for just a fill light. You can click fill, and it's automatically going to just fill some of that light into your scene. In instances like this where you have a portrait that's backlit or you have a subject, maybe a car in a sunset, something like that, using that fill light option is really, really handy for just illuminating your subject and making them stand out better within the scene. And with that being said, Dano's going to take it away and show you two other brand new filters.
Hey, before you do it, though, hold on, Dylan. You missed a very important filter, in my opinion, just in my estimation. I have it up here on screen. If you take a look, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, right here. If you look, let me get the. Here you go. Right here, you click, and there it is. Remove stick. Right there. So you never talk about that one.
Well, if you tell Dan, Because he added in the 2x, 4x, 8x. Tell Dan about the remove stick filter.
It's already there. It's right there in the filters. That's what's so upsetting to me. I have to be honest with you, Dylan. That's what it is. It's right there, and just anyway.
I could have just used it. I know.
Here you go. Go over to Dan.
That's in the legacy column, and I hid that.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody wants to get rid of sticks anymore.
No.
It adds character. It adds depth.
Yeah,
we're always talking about.
You can't see the forest for the trees. Yeah. Hey, Dylan, can you show the actually viewing the depth mask if you hold down the Option key and you move that slider? We go back to Dylan's screen for a second, assuming you still got that photo up.
I do.
Watch this. This is how cool this. This is actually done with AI. There's no depth information in the camera that we're getting. We're actually inferring the depth based on what's in the scene. It's pretty amazing. So watch this.
Okay, hold on. Option?
Yep, hold down the Option key.
I didn't know about this, Dano.
Oh, you didn't know about this? See, you're learning something every day.
Oh. Oh. Look at that.
Yeah, pretty tricky, huh?
Oh.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And it's crazy accurate.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Love that, Dano. Yeah, thanks for notifying me about that right now.
There you go. Now you know. So. As G.I. Joe used to say, knowing is half the battle. So. Alrighty. So we have a bunch more filters. That was just one of the 4 new filters, although I have to admit, depth lighting is probably my favorite one. But this would be my second favorite one, and that is the new split field filter, or a split diopter filter. You have to be really, really old to have ever seen one of these actual filters in the world, but this was actually a filter you would put over your lens. And it's basically a magnifying glass cut in half. So it's clear on top, magnifying glass on the bottom. But it was built for a specific problem, and that's these kind of low-angled landscape photos where you've got a subject in the foreground and it makes your background a million miles away because it's a wide-angle lens. So what this tool lets you do is it lets you basically split the frame in half anywhere you want and make half of it bigger. So watch. I'm just going to turn it on here. Bonk. There we go. And I'm going to grab the adjust divider parameters. I know that's a pretty awesome name for it. But it puts this little line across the middle. This lets me control where it splits the scene. I can rotate it if I want to rotate it. And there's little feather lines to control how quickly it transitions. And this basically sets where it's going to make half bigger. And then with the scale slider, I can control how much bigger it gets. I'm going to make it really big. I can grab the move it around button to move it around. There we go. Just like that. So bada bing, bada boom. Look how easy that was to take my background and make it an equal or more important part than my foreground rather than these tiny little mountains a million miles away. And of course, you can flip this around and do it the other way. Let's say I want to take something in the foreground and make it bigger. You could do the same thing with that too. So I bet you I got a sample of that. Let me see. Here we go. Here's one. So I want to make my bison a little bit bigger here. So let's add split field. I'm going to grab that same little tool. I'm just going to pull it down and give it a little twist. Actually, I got twisted all the way, come to think of it here. Where am I? So I want to make the foreground bigger. There, if I get my angle right here. And then scale that up. And look, it's a bigger buffalo in the foreground instead, without having to crop my sky or anything like that. So, yeah. So that's a handy new one that I'm having a lot of fun with.
Yeah, that's
another
cool.
one that's it has to have kind of an area that you don't care about. You just got to have an indiscriminate middle ground for it to work. But yeah, it can be quite a bit of fun, and it's a lot faster than doing it in layers. So the next one I want to show you though is actually the double exposure filter. So what this lets you do. Really, when we were kind of thinking about the new filters to add this year, we were really going back to our old-fashioned, darkroom photographic roots. So we were thinking of things that you could do or technologies that we've had forever, and double exposure and intentional camera movement and things like that were really kind of at the top of our mind. Double exposure is one of those ones where you would actually be able to combine multiple exposures together. And you can do this in camera. A lot of digital cameras let you do this, but it's a little tricky to do in camera. And, it's so much easier if you just do it after the fact, right? A lot more flexibility. So let's see. Double exposure. There it is. We'll add this filter in. And it kind of works like textures. So at the top section, we have the second exposure. This is where we can pick what the picture is we're going to stick on top of our original photo. And we include tons of cool stuff. A lot of things that are pretty trendy and popular for this specific double exposure kind of look. So there's, light textures, and there's lots of landscape, there's sports, there's birds and other animals, things like that. You just kind of go through here and pick one you like. I actually like the light category for this one. And you can see there's tons of different cool light patterns. I just go and pick one that I think will work well for my particular photo, kind of like this window. And then I can control the opacity or the strength that's being applied. I can control the blending mode that's used. So oftentimes I like lighten or screen to combine this. And then I can control how it blends in. There's built-in masking for it. So it's going to automatically apply this just to my subject, but I could also apply it to the background or the depth or the inverted depth. So a lot of flexibility in how it is applied. Of course, I can just click on it to move it around and scale it so it fits my photo the way that I want it to. Oops. Let me grab the little movie guy again here. So I'm moving it so I don't lose the eye, the all-important eye. I can keep that in there. You can change the brightness and the color and the saturation of the overlay on top of it. So you could completely shift the color if I wanted to. So if I wanted something that wasn't cool, I wanted to make something that was more warm, I have that ability to get kind of that neon look. And I can also adjust the background brightness in the photo as well. So if my photo wasn't on a clean white background like this, I have the ability to take that background and make it brighter or less bright as well. So tons of opportunities to have fun with this. Now, what is really a good idea to make it easy for folks is there's a random button. You click the random button, it's just going to try random settings. So you just keep hitting that button many times as you want until you kind of get something that you like. Now, it's not going to change the photo that you use, but it's going to change all the other settings. It kind of gives you that little bit of organic fun that you would have if you had done it in camera. So there you go. That is double exposure.
That's pretty cool.
Don't let that miss anything on that. You're the expert on double exposure, not me. So.
No, I love the filter. I would say that's probably my favorite new filter is double exposure. It looks really, really cool. You can get some really cool results with it.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to hand it back to you, and you're going to talk about intentional camera movement. So, yeah.
Thanks, Dano. Yeah. So Dano was talking about we have all these new filters. One of my other favorites is this motion filter that we have inside of ON1 Photo RAW 2026, which allows you to bring in panning motion. You could bring in twists and zooms. It's a really fun filter to play around with. One of my favorite tools, or one of my favorite ways to use it, I should say, is to create this panning motion. And it's really great for action sports or if you're photographing cars, things like that. But images like this, where you have a subject, especially this could be a biker, in this case it's a skater, where they're maybe zooming down a hill or something, and you want just a little bit of motion, you want a little bit more action within the scene. You can use the motion filter to bring that sort of panning capture where you capture the subject in motion and then the rest of the area is nice and blurred. You can do that really easily with this motion filter. So I'm going to add a filter. I'll just add motion. And
hang on a second there, Dylan.
Yeah, we're looking on the wrong screen there.
Yeah, let's get onto the Dylan screen.
There we go.
There we go.
We're here? Okay. Let me just restart where I'm going. Okay, so we're in effects here, and what I want to do is essentially create that panning capture where you capture something that's zooming across the scene and you keep the subject in motion, and then the rest of the area is nice and blurred. It's a really fun way to just create a action within your scene. So I'm going to add a filter in effects. We'll use motion, and the really cool thing about the motion filter is it actually detects subjects and backgrounds within your image, so you don't actually have to do any masking. It all does it for you. And so I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to go to styles, and I'll just click on pan. And so you can see it's detected the subject within our scene here, and we have this little bit of motion going on behind her. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up on the amount a little bit more there. We can even do quite a bit there. And then what we can do is we can modify the angle to fit where we're panning from. And you can see it's actually protecting our subject. So we have her nice and and in focus, and then the rest of the area is blurred. Well, within this protect section, you can also pull up on the feathering. And the feathering gives it that realism effect where it also feathers the edges of the subject a little bit as well. Because you're going to get this, if you've ever captured those types of images, you're going to get a little bit of that motion blur around some of the edges of your subject. And so now we have this nice action capture where she's actually moving along within the scene. And one of my favorite things to do with these action shots or these panning images is just to bring in black and white. I think with black and white, it just gives it, or you're really focused on the details and textures around her, which are these areas of motion. And so if we have our original and then our after, we have this nice action capture where she's moving along. It feels, feels like she's actually going a lot faster than she probably is within the scene. And so it just adds a little bit of that motion magic within the photo. Let me show you another one. So that's motion as far as panning goes, but there's two other options that you can use. And these are really fun for portraits. One of my favorite things to do with these is to create a moving background, if you will. And so I'm going to add that motion filter again. And again, within that style section, if you click on one of these, so for example, I'll click zoom, it's automatically going to protect the subject there. But we have this zooming going on in the background, and let me just pull up on it a little bit more so it makes it a little bit more dramatic. And we have this zooming going on in the background to just give it a little bit more life within that background area. It's a little bit intense there. We can pull it down. And again, within that protect section, I typically pull up on the feathering just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more realism within the scene there. And then, for example, if you wanted to add on glow, which you should do with every photo, you can just make things a little bit softer within that background as well. And so we have the original and then after with just this really interesting background there where it's sort of zooming in and out. With the zoom motion enabled, you can actually choose the center to where you want that motion to begin. And so we can put it in a specific region. And in an instance, if you had a subject on the left or right, you could move that centering around. And then we could use, even in this photograph, you could use twist as well and add a little bit of a twisting motion. That's a little bit too much there. And then again, I like to pull up on that feathering. And then we have the original. And then after, just giving it a little bit more life in the background. And there's a reason why the motion filter's in the creative section. This is probably not going to work on every single photograph, but if you're trying to get a creative, unique style within the background of your photograph, that motion filter is a really, really fun one to do that. Especially portraiture, or again, if you're photographing vehicles or action, sports, things like that, that motion filter really can bring a lot of style into your photos.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
It's a great way to simplify a complex background too. You're shooting on the street or you're shooting like a rodeo. There's all sorts of garbage in the background you can't get rid of. This lets you blur out the background, focus on your subject. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
hey,
really
we've got some questions, and some of these are on stuff we just did. For example, Danielle is asking for the double exposure filter. So can you add your own filter as the one that blends in with your base filter?
You can import your own, definitely. So you can put in whatever photos you want to be that overlay photo.
Yeah.
If the question is, can you use the photo that you're using? So like you wanted to do like a ghost image, you can. You would just have to import it beforehand. There's not a way to use that image like with a checkbox.
Yeah, no, I think that's what they were asking. Can you just, instead of having to use one of the default ones that come with it, can you use your own? James has got a question. I shoot with a Nikon Z9 for mainly wildlife. I would like to know, what is the best picture control to use with regard to importing into ON1 RAW and using no noise AI?
There's a few questions there. So importing is kind of up to you. I would definitely use a card reader rather than a cable from the camera. We do have a pretty full-featured import dialog that you can use to help you import those photos and put them into a specific location. But I have to admit, I just do it in the Finder. I just drag it off the memory card and put it wherever I want. But that's kind of a personal preference thing. I would not use no noise on every photo. You want to use no noise on the photos that you're open to edit, that you have high amounts of noise that you want to work on. It is an AI model. It takes a lot of memory and a lot of space to utilize that. So it's something you don't want to apply to every photo. So.
And I think what they're asking for also is the best picture control. So maybe they are setting a picture control in their camera, or they're asking, like, when you import it, I guess they want some kind of an effect applied. And maybe James could clarify in the comments. But he asked, I would like to know which is the best picture control to use with regard to importing.
Yeah, I might need a little more detail on that. You can take any preset that you create in Photo RAW, and you can then marry that to a specific camera, even down to the serial number, and say, whenever I open a photo from this camera, apply these settings. And you can do that via the preferences. So that might be what you're looking for. So if every time you open photos from this particular camera, you want it to apply a certain camera profile, or whatever is your workflow, you can do that.
And Dan, this is one. Remember, we were working on the pink flowers in that field, and so June's asking, how do you fix the part of the pink flowers that wasn't added to the yellow flower mask? So basically, how do you add to the mask?
So you can add to the mask tons of different ways. So if there was a little bit, I didn't happen to see it, I would probably use the move edge slider. And that will just take the edge of the mask and move it a little in or a little bit out. And that would be a good way. If there was an edge or a halo that it wasn't getting, I would probably do that. That's the most direct way to do it.
Yeah.
You can always use a brush, but that's a pretty painful way to go about it. So, yeah.
All right, here's a question from Tom. Tom wants to know, in resize, does the PPI matter? So if it's a 72 PPI image versus a 300, how does that affect the resize?
Without getting into like a treatise on what resolution means, it really matters the number of pixels, not the resolution. The resolution is just how tightly packed the pixels are. The only time that matters is when you're going to go to print something. You need to keep that in mind. So oftentimes you're using resize to get to the point of making a file to print. At that point, you want to make sure the resolution is set for what your printer needs. Probably somewhere in the 240 to 360 range, depending on your device. So.
There you go. There's a couple more questions. Hang on. Can you scroll up a little bit there? Hang on. When I load into Photo RAW 2026, how do I keep the personalized effects presets? The last time I upgraded, I had to reload all my presets. So is there a way to keep the presets intact when you update?
Generally, it will do that automatically. So
yeah,
if it didn't bring your presets over, we probably encountered some sort of an issue. You contact our support guys, and they'll actually walk you through how to force that migration again.
All right, there we go. All right, Dana, we're handing the mic back to you.
Back to me. All right, back to Dan in the studio. Alrighty. So we're kind of getting out of the bottom quarter of the hour here. I'm going to hit a few of the other enhancements. These may not be as big and as exciting as some of the other things, but they're pretty handy little workflow adjustments. So we've made some improvements to the transform pane. This is the tool that you use to correct perspective issues, or you can enhance them depending on what you'd like to do as well. So probably the biggest change now is that we'll automatically scale the photo so that you never get those annoying little black corners when you make an adjustment.
Yay.
So for example, I know, exactly. You don't have to recrop the photo. So now if I move something like the vertical slider, you can see how I can correct the perspective so that the buildings are nice and parallel. I didn't have to crop the photo again. It's just smart enough to do that for me automatically. So that's a big improvement. Another thing that's handy is rather than having just the four-corner keystone tool, we've added horizontal and vertical tools, which will only correct in one direction at a time. So I could just grab the vertical tool, see it pops up two little lines. I just set the lines on two things that should be parallel to each other. Let's say the sides of these buildings, here and here. The top and bottom don't matter. We're only looking at the angle of the two lines, and I hit the apply button. And bang, there you go. It's corrected that. And it's also adjusted some other stuff in here to make it perfect. So that is a pretty handy way to go. You also have the ability to now use this amount slider, which can be really handy because even though it's technically correct, it may not be pleasing. You might want something in between. So you can actually grab this amount slider and I could fade it back a little bit. So let's say I only want,
Yeah.
70% of that correction. So I can do that too. That's a pretty handy thing to do because if you've ever, I'll show you an example. Let's take a photo like this one. Perspective is just totally wonky, right? So if I grab the keystone tool and I set something that I know in the real world is supposed to be nice and perfectly square, here and here and here and over yonder, there we go, and I hit apply, it's like, yes, that is technically correct, but I've lost a lot of the building and I've lost kind of the fun perspective of shooting down the street. Well, again, I can just fade that back a little bit and I can get a good compromise of correction, but still keep the essence of the photo that way. So that could be a pretty good one. I think I got one more thing I want to show you. And this is for folks who are going back through their film archives, or if you're just getting into film and you're shooting it for fun, there's a couple different ways you can digitize film. You can use a scanner, a flatbed scanner, a dedicated film scanner, if you can still find one out there. And that will take your negatives and invert them for you automatically. But another way to do it, because we all have phones and we all have digital cameras already, is you just take a picture of the film on a light table with a macro lens. The problem is when you do that, you're going to get a photo that looks like this. It's pretty hard to make an adjustment to because it hasn't been inverted. So we've added a new mode in the Develop tab in Tone and Color to help you with this. So there's this little mode combo box. It's going to default to positive. That's most of the pictures you take. But if you're taking a picture of a black and white negative or a color negative, you could now pick that in here. I can say color negative, and look, it automatically inverts it and it automatically removes that nasty color cast you get from the orange integrated mask layer. Now you've got normalish color with a film photo. And when I move the sliders, it does what you expect. A negative exposure is going to make it darker. A positive exposure is going to make it brighter. You can do all the normal stuff that you would with that negative photo now. So it's kind of a fun way to get into film or back into film if that's where you have come from in the past. So I think that is about it. I guess one thing I might notice is over here, the layers pane and my masking pane, I have moved to the left-hand side. You can actually pick where those go in the UI. They'll start on the right-hand side by default, but if you're working on a small laptop screen like I am, I like to move them to the left to give me more room to work. And you can do that in the window menu over here. You can control whether they live on the left or the right, or if they're a floating palette for both the layers and the property stuff. Just giving you some more ways to kind of customize your workspace
that's very
your
nice.
taste.
I did not know that. A couple of questions. Scott Berger is asking, can you go through the workflow? If your base program is Lightroom, then you're jumping over to Photo RAW and jumping back. What would be the process?
So you would actually use Photo RAW as a plugin to Lightroom. So if you're using Lightroom as your main app, and that's where you're doing your file management, you would do it from inside of Lightroom, and then you would just use the plugin extras menu command inside of Lightroom to send it to Photo RAW. So if you give me a minute here, I've got to actually get Lightroom running. Give me just a couple seconds here. We'll get us into that scenario. That's not a very exciting photo.
Pick a good one, Dan.
Pick a good one. Let me just reset this photo in Lightroom here. All right, you can go ahead. You see Lightroom now? Okay. So I've got a photo. I've done my basic working in Lightroom. I'm ready to go do some stylization with things that I can't do inside of Lightroom, like glow, for example. So I will take this photo. I'll go to File, down to Plugin Extras. And then if I've installed Photo RAW, I'll see all the different entry points to get into the different features inside of Photo RAW right here. So if I wanted to add an effect, I would go to Effects. So I'd say, I'm going to send this to Effects. I pick what I want to edit. I can edit a copy or a copy with the Lightroom settings. Obviously, I want the work I've done in Lightroom, so I'm going to pick copy with Lightroom settings. And then I'm going to pick what it's going to create, because we can't actually edit the raw photo and get the Lightroom settings. We have to create a new file, obviously. So you can pick any of the standard file formats, or you can pick what I like is the Smart Photo PSD. This creates a PSD that Photoshop and Lightroom understands as a normal PSD, but it lets us save some additional metadata into it that makes it re-editable. So watch. I'm going to open this up. It's going to create that new PSD file. That's what Lightroom's doing in the background. It's going to launch Photo RAW, and it's going to put us right into effects where we were at here in a second. Got to check our update first. All right, so there we are. You notice how we're in effects. Let's say, oh, well, I'm going to make it black and white first. There we go. And then I want to add a glow. Glow, 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 glow. And let's see, which one do I like
the
for
glow
this?
filter isn't favorited, Dano?
Oh, I think I was just kind of messing around, not necessarily my real favorites, because I love glow a lot too. So yeah, let's do kind of a nice normal glow, and then what's a photo without vignette? There we go. So now I've kind of made my adjustments to that photo. I use 3 filters. I'm going to hit done. It's going to save that photo. It's going to go back to Lightroom. And you notice now, right next to it in my Lightroom catalog, there's that new one that's the Smart Photo. They're kind of stacked together. Now, here's the really cool part about that being a Smart Photo. Let's say I want to change my mind. I want to go back and edit that. If I just go back to Plugin Extras and I select Effects again, it says, oh, open the original. It knows that it's a Smart Photo. I open it again and watch what happens. It takes it right back into Photo RAW where we were. It's got the exact same stack. All the settings that I applied to it are already there. So let's say I really liked it in color instead. So I'll just get rid of the black and white filter. And now I have a color version. We'll save that. It'll go back to Lightroom. And now it's back to color instead. So there you go. That's kind of how you would use it as a plugin rather than using it as a replacement for Lightroom.
All righty. Hey, this is a great question, and I know that you know the answer. This is from Diane. Diane asks, I'm confused about the product line. Does Photo RAW Max 2026 include Resize AI, Effects, No Noise AI, Portrait AI, or do those 4 tools need to be downloaded separately? I want to have the most current version of everything, but I'm not clear on how to accomplish that.
Okay, so the best way to think about it is Photo RAW is the superset of everything. Everything is built into Photo RAW. Photo RAW Max is that with the connection of the plugins so that you can talk to Lightroom and Photoshop like I just showed you. You would need Photo RAW Max for that. If you're, let's say, a graphic designer and all you care about is resizing photos, then you would go out and you would get Resize on its own. Most people just want to get Photo RAW or Photo RAW Max, where they get everything all in one. No need to have all the others individually.
All right, so let's just make sure that it's crystal clear. So Photo RAW Max is the one that has everything plus the plugins for Lightroom and Photoshop. Yep, and then the other one, just Photo RAW 2026, has all the plugins, but you would always have to be launching natively from Photo RAW. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it has all the plugins. I would say it has all the features. So,
or all the features, right? There wouldn't be plugins, right? It has all the features.
Yeah.
So AI, Resize AI is there, Effects is there, all that stuff is there.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. So, all right, let me see if there's any more questions. There are, but we are about out of time. Oh, I did, let me get to this one here real quickly. Pecan is asking, so I already bought the upgrade for Resize 2026, and now I'm interested in upgrading to Photo RAW 2026. Is there a discount if I already upgraded my Resize? That's an interesting question.
What I would do is actually just contact our customer service folks and they'll work something out for you. So there's not a direct path that you can do that directly through the website, but customer service can help you out for sure.
and mention that you are a direct relative of Dan's, that you are a cousin.
That's right.
He calls me
Yeah.
cuz, the whole 9 yards, and that certainly will help.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Any last words from you guys? Where can people go and can they get a demo?
Yep, you can download a fully functional 30-day trial from the website. Another way to think about that is we also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you could buy it now while it's on sale, and then if you don't like it, you could always return it. If you are interested, if you look in the chat at the very, very top, I put in a discount code for you. If you use the discount code OCT Savings, OCT Savings, you can save up to 20% on your new or upgrade to 2026.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's very gracious of you. Dan, I noticed Dylan did not offer a discount.
He's got his own discount code. It'll get you even more, but you have to send him your email on the back of a $20 bill to get it.
Dylan, you've been a good sport through this show. I will say that.
Of course.
You've been your usual gracious self. All right. Well, guys, first off, thank you so much for joining us today, Dylan and Dan. Thanks. Man, you got some amazing stuff happening there. My hat's off to you guys. You're always kind of pushing the boundaries of what's new. We saw some stuff today that I've never seen anywhere, right? There's got some crazy plugins. Also, I don't want to sleep on the fact that how much improved the quality of the masking is. That masking quality, you guys took a major leap there. Fantastic. And you have so many things that you can mask, which I think has always been one of your strong points. Like you look at a scene and you're like, oh, we can do the stream and we can do the grass and we can do the water and we can do whatever. So you guys are doing great stuff as always. So congratulations on the new launch. Thank you guys for joining us. Also, thanks to everybody out there who tuned in today and watched us. We greatly appreciate you spending a little time with us and checking out the brand new ON1 Photo RAW 2026. Don't forget to catch my ON1 and ON1. Let's say it again. If I can't read it off screen, I can't say it. My ON1. Boom.
One-on-one.
That's something
Your
like
one-on-one.
One-on-one podcast where you'll see these guys on there from time to time, and we share tips and techniques and answer questions, and it's a lot of fun. And so I hope to see you there. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Guys.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.